Alright, so in this video we're going to look into our experience, or open ourselves up directly to experience, and investigate what it is that's here that isn't an object. What in our experience is not an object. And this isn't something that can be found, because it doesn't need to be found. You could say that it is what's doing the finding. But it's certainly here. Every time we care to consider this, or inquire, or relax that objective direction of attention, what I'm talking about can recognize itself in experience, so to speak. And that happens when the preoccupation with and activity of mind that continuously relates to and recognizes objects, for example objects in the physical world, it might seem, or thought objects, when that relaxes down enough such that what it is that isn't an object, or transcendent of objectivity, or includes all objects, can shine through naturally in our experience. So what I'm talking about, I don't usually refer to this as the subject, because the subject is something that we can relate to and experience. The subject is something, in the separate sense, can be objectified. But if what you are, that we assume is the subject, that's here all the time, that's never not here, that's here as objects come and go and move through experience, if what you are can be aware of the subject and the object, so the subject I assume is me, and the object that I relate to, if it can be aware of both of those, then what are you? What are you that transcends the separate subject? Or what are you that's behind the assumption that I'm the subject, I relate to my experience in an objective way? So if we consider what is not an object in experience, because the regular way of relating to the world is I am a separate object in it, or may be called the subject, and I relate to my objective experience, I relate to my thoughts, I relate to the external world. I am constantly projecting a direction of attention out, and like relaying or checking back in with this subjective position to know and understand and orient myself in the world. And in the space of thoughts. So a stream of thoughts or thought objects comes and goes, moves through my experience. But what I am is the constant that's always here. That constant is, through this strange thought function, assumed to be an object that's apart from experience. Something separate or something at a distance from experience. But if we pay close attention and investigate back and try and find that subject, objectify the subject of experience. Like I said, this isn't something that you can find, or what you are isn't something that you can find objectively, because you don't need to. Because it's here already, it's inherent. It's not something that can be captured or defined in objective terms. It doesn't have limitations, it's infinite. So if we investigate the qualities of the objective world, and that it has borders and definition, it has size and relativity, there is more than one object, it's knowable, it's relatable. So in my experience now, I've got a bunch of trees, a bunch of cars, a bunch of people, a bunch of bollards, a building. All of these objects have definition and borders. They have a limit, and that limit is what defines them apart from the rest of experience. So when I look at an object, I recognize that, apparently from this subjective position, but there's a recognition there. I know what that is. I recognize it almost instantly. And as I recognize it, I give it relative value. It's either important or overlookable, important or unimportant. So I recognize the people in this car park, and they immediately appear to me as more important in my experience as objects than a bollard. Hopefully. Hopefully. In that recognition, in that relational dichotomy between me, the subject, and what appears as an object in my experience, there is an assumption there. It's assumed, or backwards extrapolated, that when I recognize that object, I recognize it from a subjective position. That subjective position is inherently assumed to be another object in experience, a separate unit with limitations that's moving through this world of objects as but another object within it. That's the assumption of the me as the subject. I can become aware of that, but that simply means that it appears in my awareness as, or I appear in my awareness as another object. This is continually reinforced whenever I recognize an object apart from me at a distance, with its own separate inherent value and inherent existence, as something within this. boundaries, separateness, limitation, value, the qualities of an object. Me as the subject, or the separate subject with an object, has the same qualities. Boundaries, limitation, separateness, inherent existence apart from everything else with its own value. What's tied to me as the subject is possibly the greatest value as an object, as the center of my experience. Kind of like a survival thing. I'm the most important object in this environment. And that can manifest across many levels, but it has an emotional and energetic charge to it. It's deeply tied into our biological survival instincts. Which makes it a very important, very high value object. Which is why we're not so inclined to overlook its objectivity so easily. But what we're going to do is we're going to look back. Whilst looking out into the experience, we're going to look back towards what is this subject that's here. If I can recognize myself and relate to myself in my body, even if I look at it as an object, then where is the true subject? What am I that's the subject that is aware of my experience? So this has the effect of, it can have the effect of creating a bit of space, because we're relaxing that objective relational function. We're looking back, and it might even be for a fraction of a second, getting in touch with what I am that transcends objectivity completely. So, you can practice this with me. We'll do it in the visual field, and we'll scan our environment and notice that there is almost an immediate recognition of a multitude of objects at a distance from what I am. When we assume that, we assume that I am a separate object myself. And we'll just notice that the value that's imputed onto the world of objects from this position, that immediately categorizes it into separate objects with their own inherent value, and value as they relate to me, the object that's looking at it, or subject. Consider for a moment that is a thought function. And to do this, we're going to tune into the visual sense, the looking, sight, the scene, and see that in the immediate and simultaneous seeing, or the awareness of the scene, does that awareness differentiate between objects? Is there more than one seeing, more than one appearance, more than one awareness. Does the awareness know separate values? Does the awareness know categories of importance? Does the awareness know distance, or dimension, or size? Are the borders between objects actually borders in the awareness of it? This is a tricky one, because what we're doing here is best to do in a safe environment. What we're doing here is we're seeing through or relaxing the survival function that allows the protection in the environment of this body as an object. But if we don't need that right now, can we relax that out to get in touch with what is this seeing that's not an object? Objects appear within the seeing. Is the seeing itself an object? Is the awareness itself an object? There may be an assumption that the seeing comes from me, my body, which is an object within this. Is that the experience though? Or is that just a thought? If you are aware of that, this body as an object, then where is the subject? Where is that is not an object? Might be easier to do this in the space of thought. This is kind of like a more a deeper inquiry into the augmentation in the sense experience. Could be necessary to close off the senses and do this with the thought objects that move in consciousness. So you can do the exact same thing with that. But we can then, if you're in touch with this, what I'm talking about, that it's just here, that it's just inherent, we can investigate its qualities, even if it seems vague or elusive. What are the qualities of that which is not an object? It contains every object and experience. It doesn't have boundaries. You could call it one, but you can't find the limits of it to define it as one from a position outside it. It can't be objectified. It doesn't exist in time. Time, you could say, appears within it as an object. It doesn't know separateness. Separate objects, the thoughts that make it look like there are separate objects, appears as an object within it. So it's not limited to objectivity. It doesn't know distance. Distance appears as a thought within it, as an object, a thought object. There is no distance. But that doesn't exclude any distances or the experience of distance. You could say it's invisible, but it's not apart from the appearance, appearing within vision. so paradoxical, so free and unlimited, untouchable by the objects within it, but it touches and is in full contact with all the objects at the same time. If what you assume you are as a separate subject appears as an object within this, then is this what's not an object what you are? Can that become self-confirmingly clear in experience? And it doesn't need to be confirmed or concluded with an objective thought. That objective thought doesn't touch it, can't define it. We can move this right through the sense experience into the sounds, into the sensation, and we'll see that the same applies. You could even say there's nothing in experience that isn't an object, aside from the essence of experience itself. So the implications of the clear realization of this as your fundamental essence, as what you are, in an undoubtable way, leaves behind the limitations of objectivity, leaves behind all of that which is not what I just described. Separateness, beginning, end, distance, dimension, value. Like, there's no value in this. Value appears within it. It's completely transcendent of anything that we can think, because those thoughts appear as an object within and as this. It's completely liberated, completely unlimited, completely indestructible. There will be a limit in this where we might get like a kind of restlessness or a fear, anxious response, where the mind comes up to try and impute value and meaning in an objective way on this and try and explain this. It'll be like, but this, but what about this, but. Those are just objects appearing within what you are. Relaxing that out, letting go of that by seeing clearly that that's an object, is what brings this into clarity, because it is inherently clear already. It does not need to be objectified. We don't need to relate to this. It's unrelatable. We don't need to know this as the one in it. That's impossible. It is what's knowing. It knows this, including you as the person. So then what? Then what? Now what? What's the next? There's no next. That's just a narrative in time, appearing in and as what's not an object. If we get in touch with that restlessness, that need to move away or stand back from and relate to, we can notice it, it comes into clarity, and it can be relaxed. And this that's inherent has the chance to shine through with more and more clarity, more and more brightness. Anyway, that'll do for now. Let me know if that was clear, and I'll talk to you next time.